Hi, welcome to Spry Whimsy. Today I'm going to show you the older Mach II, one of the earlier Spinolution wheels, and show you a little bit of how it is different from a current Spinolution wheel. There's been quite a few generational changes over the years, lots of improvements. There's still some basics about this that are still consistent with the newer wheels, and we'll go over those. But I'm also doing this to show how the head comes apart for a customer who needs that right now. So let's get into it. So one of the features of a Spinolution wheel that has not changed from the beginning, that's still available today, is the simple drive band speed change, where you just move your band up and down on the different whirls on the back of the head. That is still current today, but this one was made in plywood, grooved in. The newer ones are made out of anodized aluminum. There was a generation where they made it out of corian. One of the other features up here is the fact that you can take off the orifice bar. I should have done this beforehand. Yeah, that just slides off. It is magnetically held on. Even these earlier ones, the orifice bar was magnetically held on. There was a generation before this, specifically with the Echoes, where you have to squeeze the bars to release it before the magnets were put in. So there is a generation before that where you squeeze the bars to remove your orifice bar. And the other feature that's still on the Spinolution wheel is now, of course, I can remove my bobbins without having to touch the ratios, touch your tension at all. None of that has to change. So that just slides back on there. You just fit it on there. Now this one is pre-magnetic. I still have to line up my little hex nut with the back of the flyer here, but it doesn't snap on like a newer one does. It just slides on and puts into place. I'll put that back there. Now, one of the other features still exist is the pegs. The pegs have changed. These were a brass screw with a bushing around it, with little white plastic ones. There is now a different kind of sort of a plastic screw or plastic peg that gets screwed into from the bottom. That's how the newer ones are. And on an 8-ounce, they're usually a little larger now than these were. One other generational difference is this one, like the newer ones, or at least like the Echo does, is you lift up your treadles to open up the footman, or pitman in this case, so you can remove your drive band and replace it. On an earlier version, there was actually a system where you actually sort of pulled this forward to give yourself a gap and then push it back. So on an older wheel, it may have that feature, and this one almost gets there. It's sort of a somewhat mid-generational wheel for that. One of the big things about this wheel that has changed over time, or the difference between this wheel and the Mach III and the Echoes, is this one does not have easily interchangeable heads. You could change it out. You have to basically take the flyer apart and put it back together. It's not as simple, just drop it into the mortise and tighten it down. This wheel is very solid. A-frame back. It makes a very solid wheel. Let's tip that down, show the whole thing. There are photos of this platform, the Mach II, out in the Mongolian desert. A group of spinners and weavers making product out there, traveling nomadically with these wheels. A little hefty for that, but it is a solid wheel. I'm sure they've adapted ways to make everything keep working for them out there, because they're pretty creative folk. Now, one of my favorite improvements to a Spinolution wheel was the elimination of the E-clip. The head assembly has been redesigned, where this one you have to disassemble part of this in the back to take the flyer off. On newer ones, everything happens from the front, and then you take it off, and then you can also then take it from the back. But here you have to start back here. So let me take off the bobbin and the orifice bar and the dry band, and we'll get into that. Now, I've never enjoyed taking off the E-clips. I'm sure there are tips and tricks that I've never learned, but we're going to show you how I do it. So there's this little clip. I have my little needle nose pliers. These are actually a little bendy nose that helps a little bit. Now you got to be careful, because I have done this before where I sent it across the room and had troubles finding it again. So I got a grip on that. There's an open side down here right now. I'm going to pull up on this and hopefully hang on to it. Didn't get it that time. Let's try again. Okay. So there's the E-clip. Let's see if it focuses on that. So that slips over and catches into a groove on here. Behind that, I have this little split ring washer. I'm going to set that down. Remember the order I took them off in. Turn this. Now, this should slide out. Alright, and on here I have another split ring washer that sort of puts a gap between this and this part of the head on here. And then this whole thing can slide forward, and in this case I have another split ring washer that's on here, and then I have the nut and then a reduced size down to the shaft size here, the 1/4 inch shaft. Those are kind of the parts that I have to play with. So there's the shaft all the way out. So sometimes you may need to, there's the magnet on there, set that aside. May need to take this and sort of degrease it. It gets a little greasy, grimy, and stuff can get clogged up in here. Now, this particular one, and I know there's some generational changes on this too, the tension block is straight up and down. So, I'll get that in a second. It's tough to get your tension block to release. So I put on this one a little ribbon that I stapled to the top to pull that out. Now the first time I did that, I couldn't get that. Without that on there, I actually had to push up on the block from inside here to be able to get it to pull it out. So I kind of had to take the head apart even to pull this tension block out. Now this is an older style, just a single groove. This one actually has leather on it. And it's pretty small and narrow. It just drops down in there. If this starts to squeal, you get out your key or something and just sort of rough up that leather a little bit and put it back in. Now I'm not going to put that in now because I need to put the wheel back together before that goes in, because if this goes in, it goes down far enough, it keeps the shaft from going through. So I'm going to keep that out for now. Now I'm not sure if this is a generational thing or not, but this one, I have 2 dowels here, and this little piece which has one of the bearings in it is kind of just set on here. It's not glued in place. It's just kind of friction held on in place. The one thing I'm going to do before I put it all back together is I'm going to wipe this down. Remember, Spinolution wheels do not require any oil. They rely on the sealed bearings, and I just lost a part. I gotta go find it now. Okay, what I lost was another one of the little split ring washers that were on this. I was slid over that. Now if we look at this, you'll see down here on the back of the shaft here, there's a notch. That notch is ultimately what the E-clip will slide into when it's all reassembled. So that notch is what this is actually going to go into. So now that I've wiped this off, I'm going to take a second and kind of see if there's anything inside this shaft that needs to get a little cleaned out too. Because sometimes things get gunked up in there, it can mess up your spinning and throw off your tension. So So we're just going to clean that off a little bit. Wipe down any excess. I feel like somebody in the past might have thrown a little grease on this or a little oil. They shouldn't have, but this was a sort of a demoed wheel that was out for a while and somebody might have done something to it at one point. So I'm going to stuff my paper towel through this. Take that off again. And just sort of clean that out a little bit. Make sure I do the same thing here. Clean that out. And that's just some paper towel. Put that back on. Take this. I still have that little ring on here. I'm going to put that back into this shaft. I probably should have cleaned that one too, into the flyer head. One more split ring on here. And slide it all back together. Now, because of these little rings, have got a little, they act as little springs to some extent. So I'm going to put another one here on the back. And it has a little bit of a play to it, a little springy play to it. So I got to push this E-clip now that I can see my groove. It's coming out the back. Get that started a little bit, and hopefully I do this on the first try. I'm just going to squeeze that back together. I bet there's a tool for this. I just don't have it. There it is. It's on there. So all the parts are reassembled there. Note, make sure that when you spin your shaft, your flyer head shouldn't spin with it. They should spin independently. I'm going to take my tension block, drop that back in, put the little spring with the white bushing down, and re-screw the head. And then put it back together. Snap that on, and it's all good to go. Oh, dry band would help too. So that's how to disassemble and reassemble and sort of clean out the head on Spinolution Mach II. Hope that is helpful.